And so what is a mistrial? Well, I think there's a common misconception.
It's my rapper name.
You're
Mistrial.
Mistrial.
With a 1 for the L.
Or like a...
Continue. We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are filming because you asked, we answered. You want to know about jury nullification. So stick around. We're going to talk about what jury nullification is, why potential nullifiers normally don't make it onto the jury, and finally, why jury nullification is not the magic bullet you might think that it is. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And to the uninitiated, what is jury nullification? If you haven't heard this term, well, essentially it's when a juror, typically holds a strong conscious belief, and they refuse to follow the law. Therefore, they're not in a position to render a judgment of guilt against another person. And so it comes up in a lot of different contexts. You see it with sovereign citizens. You see it with lots of hot button political issues. And so, the gun community, no exception to any of those things. We see a lot of folks in the comment section who say, hey, if I found myself in this situation, I'm going to nullify. I make it onto a jury. It involves a gun. I'm going to choose to acquit this person simply because it involves firearms. Maybe it involves self-defense. And there's some issues.
Well, to that I say, move to Harris County, Texas, and register to vote here and make it onto our juries.
We would love that.
Welcome. But so it is not that easy. And I will say, there are times where I have very much hoped that juries would nullify, and they have refused because they are sworn to follow the law. If you've ever gone to be selected for a jury or deselected from said jury, you are placed under oath. And once you start talking about these legal issues, ultimately, you are going to be asked the same question over and over and over again, which is, could you follow this law? Yeah. And if you say, no, you're not going to make it onto the jury, right? And if you say yes, well, then what?
You've just sworn that you'll follow the law, in open court. I mean, it's the same as, you put your hand on the Bible, hand to God, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. And now, if you're doing something contrary to that, that could be an issue. Now, so how does this come up, right? You're in jury selection, like Emily said, deselection. Really, it's about selecting who's ever left over. But that's exactly right. The attorneys go down the line, say, hey, here's the law in this case. The way a jury works is they get the facts from the witnesses. The court gives them the law. They smash those things together, and then they come up with a result. And so...
Jury smash.
Jury smash. But...
I like that. All right, keep going.
All right. But all right, so that's theoretically how the system should work. Now, all right, I think we have a clip. I want to play this to just show how judges feel about this.
Now listen, what we're not going to have in this jury is people coming in overnight and thinking up and trying to make up now so they can get out of the jury. That's not going to happen, all right? Right? Because if I find that someone said something yesterday under oath and changes it because they're trying to fabricate something to get out of serving on this jury, there's going to be repercussions.
And I mean, and I think Richard has some judge stories to share, but I mean, it is... it's not always something that's like really high stakes. And there are times where you're like, oh, I really wish that jury would nullify, but... I
have a constitutional right to get intoxicated and drive a jet ski in the state of Texas.
I love that guy, by the way. But I mean, I was actually just going to use an intoxication example because when I was a very, very, very young lawyer, and of course, Richard and I were prosecutors for Galveston County, Texas, which it used to be back in the day, made fairly reasonable decisions, especially about DWIs, because driving while intoxicated on the island is a tried and true tradition. I mean, just, why not? But at the time, I was very good friends with a prosecutor who was a brand new baby attorney, just like me, who worked for Montgomery County, Texas, where it is a capital crime to DWI. And there was a case he tried that he was forced to try by his chief. And I remember distinctly how upset he was by it because the guy had taken Ambien for the very first time. No dispute. It was proven this was the first time he had ever taken Ambien. He had no idea how it was going to affect him. And he was one of those people who sleep, walks, eats, talks, makes meals, drives. So he took an Ambien in his sleep, got behind the wheel, and drove got picked up for DWI. Again, undisputed. They did a blood test. There was aim in his blood, no alcohol, nothing else. He had his prescription date, everything to prove, like, look, I didn't know. And you would think in a reasonable world it would never have made it to trial, but Montgomery County is not a reasonable world, or at least it wasn't back then. This is over a decade ago. And the jury actually sent a note out when they rendered the guilty verdict where they said, we felt like we had to follow the law, but we're furious. We're furious that you brought this case. This is not a just result, and we don't like it. But they still didn't nullify because they take their oaths very seriously.
Right. And, you know, we see the pressure from the judge. We just watched that video clip. I mean, very early experience I had when I was a prosecutor was watching a...
I remember the case.
This is a trial for possession of...
We don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah. Let's just say lewd stuff involving children, not good stuff. And we had a juror who said, you know, this is against my religious beliefs. I'm not going to observe this material. And the judge essentially got into a shouting match with him, took him into custody, said that she would strap him to a chair and tape his eyes open and force him to watch this stuff.
Made lots of commentary about the gravity of the offense. It was very prejudicial to the defendant. Not, you know, you still have to respect their constitutional rights even when they've done something bad. So
right.
It was
and that case ended up getting overturned on appeal because the judge had so much undue influence over the case. So we see, I mean, there's a little bit of a check there. But all right, going back to the nullification. All right, so you have this strongly held belief. You're sworn to tell the truth. You know, maybe you don't get questioned in jury selection about whether you're going to follow the law.
Maybe you don't.
So you're not lying.
You're not lying.
But you made it. So maybe you make it onto this jury with this belief, hey, guess what? I'm not going to, I mean, you still swear to follow the law, you know, when you get impaneled. But
yeah.
All right, so maybe you're not directly asked this question by the lawyer, but the judge is going to impanel everybody and they're all going to swear to follow the law. All right, let's just say for whatever reason you've slipped through the cracks now, jury nullifier. You're now sitting on this jury. Or let's say you weren't a jury nullifier, and this is something that comes up in the comment section a lot. Hey, why don't the lawyers ever argue for jury nullification?
That's where all y'all out there. So we had some really genuine questions about, let's talk about jury nullification. We're so happy to respond to those with this video. We also, over the years, have gotten like, well, if you were a good lawyer, you would just argue jury nullification. It's like, oh, would you, internet lawyers? No, you would not, because that will get you a mistrial in the state of Texas.
Threatens your law license.
7 days a week and twice on Sundays. It is, if I stand up there in front of a jury at closing argument and say, shmurry shmullification, they will mistrial me and I will never, ever get to set foot in that courtroom ever again.
No, so, I mean, lawyers,
you just have to know. You just have to,
lawyers' hands are tied.
You have to know. You have to, as the jury, you have to know that it's within your purview, and hopefully you do know that, but the lawyers can't get up there at the closing argument and argue it.
So maybe you made it on. Lawyer can't argue it. Let's just talk about the historical tradition of jury nullification. We have a long common law history of jury nullification as far as Western civilization goes. So I think it is fair to say that it is enshrined in common law. But again, we have this countervailing force of judge ordering people to follow the law. So we got all these different things going on. All right. So what happens now? All right. So you're in the deliberation room. You made it onto the jury. You've heard all the facts and the evidence in the case. You have this strongly held conscious belief, you know what, I just can't convict somebody for this crime. You're back in the jury room deliberating. Is this the silver bullet that we think it is? No,
because let's say you are just one man. You're just one man, and you're going to vote not guilty. And then however many other people are going to vote guilty. Well, that's great. You did a solid. We love you. We love free thinkers on our jury, whether that's free thinking for jury nullification or just being the guy who's like, I disagree, you know, right? You want leaders. You want leaders.
It's extremely, I mean, it's extremely heartening. I mean, the American tradition is we'd rather, you know, 100 guilty men go free than one innocent person suffer. That's the American tradition of the judicial system. And if you're that one person standing up and fighting for that individual's rights and rendering not guilty, I mean, that's an incredible thing. It's amazing.
But everybody else votes guilty. You vote not guilty. That's wonderful. We thank you for your service. However, what happens? Not a not guilty verdict.
No, they enter a mistrial. And so what is a mistrial? Well, I think there's a common misconception.
It's my rapper name.
Mistrial.
With a 1 for the L.
Or like a...
Continue.
All right, so you've gotten a mistrial. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's a new trial, they start from scratch, they get new jurors, they represent all the evidence. It doesn't make it go away.
No, it does not go away. And, you know, although, again, county by county, prosecutor by prosecutor, it varies. Sometimes you get a mistrial, the state goes, all right, we did our due diligence, we brought it to a jury of 12 of your peers could not agree that you're guilty, you're free to go. We are going to dismiss the case, we're not going to prosecute you again. That used to be more common than it is. Now, let's say you show up in Harris County jury with an accusation that you say murdered your parents in cold blood, and the state will prosecute you 3 or 4 times just to get their guilty verdict. And now, with fresh new evidence we manufactured at the last minute. Anybody who hasn't looked up the Armstrong trial, you really should.
But, I mean, to quote an Edwin Walker, and I totally agree with him on this, a mistrial is reasonable doubt.
Yes.
That should be the end of a case.
Yes.
But that's unfortunately not the way the world is. So they start from scratch. So maybe, you know, if you're in a position to where you can be the leader, convince your peers to vote not guilty, great, fantastic. Should you be talking about jury nullification at that point, though, among your peers?
No. You really shouldn't say those words ever.
Yeah,
Don't say the words.
Right, because part of this...
You could say, it's not fair, it's not just, I don't agree with it.
Yeah, you saying or uttering or saying anything along the lines of, I'm not going to follow the law, that's where people get in hot water.
It is. Because, I mean, potentially, and I think you pulled up an instance of this, they could bring you up on perjury. You swore to follow that law and you didn't do it.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know,
the case it's been a little while.
Rare that would happen, but...
The guy, they ended up, I think it was a mistrial, went out on social media, basically said he performed jury nullification. Don't put stuff in writing, folks. What are y'all doing? No. Not us, not y'all, but what are people doing out there?
I know it. And, I mean, I'll throw one more thing in about mistrials and retrials, which is that it is, and this is one reason why the state really should never do that to you, is that it just compounds the injustice because you hire a lawyer. You hire a lawyer to do these things for you. Some lawyers' contracts cover the cost of a retrial within which you've already paid them. Some do not. So it is entirely possible that there are human beings out there who are like, I paid my lawyer's retainer, I paid my lawyer's trial fee, I can't afford to try this case again.
Yeah.
And, you know, from the lawyer's perspective too, if it's like a month-long trial, it's like, well, you know,
I got to keep the lights on.
The lawyer's got to keep the lights on too. You can't do the rest of your job while you're in trial for a month. You can't keep your office running. It costs a lot of money to be in trial. So it's not that all lawyers are really greedy. It's that some can support the cost of a retrial and some cannot. So it is completely unjust. Completely unjust. The unjustness compounds.
And so, ultimate question, Emily Taylor, armed attorney, what are do you pro-jury nullification? Where are you at on this?
Oh, God, yes. God, yes. If I could try a case wearing a shirt that said jury nullification, I would do it, you know, but it's not the solution to all of your problems. Unfortunately, it is a long and storied tradition in the country that can still be applied, and you hope it will be. Well, you hope you never get to that point with a trial. But if you get to a trial, you hope that it will be applied. But unfortunately, it's not the be-all and end-all.
Well, I have to say there has never been an unjust loss, so there's never a reason to have jury nullification.
Yeah.
Complete sorry.
That checks out. Yeah.
But we're interested to see what you folks have to say, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please question, comment for us below. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.